Good morning. This is Professor Gardetto. Going to talk a little bit about some problems you're going to see on homework number 18. So let me preview this assignment here. Homework 18 talks about problems that ask you to solve using the quadratic formula. Recall that we have a few other methods that we could learn or we could use to solve quadratic equations. You don't have to use the quadratic formula. So if you can factor a polynomial, if it's equal to 0 on one side, and if we can factor, by all means, ignore the directions and factor. So like k squared plus 4k minus 45 is factorable. I know that because -9, 5 and -9 multiply to get -45, and they happen to add to get 4. So -78. See this one here, I believe, might be non-factorable. So if it's non-factorable, and a quick check here, 78, the only numbers that I multiply to get 78, I mean, I can think 2 times 39, 78 divided by 6, 78 divided by 6 is 13. Oh, it's 6 and 13. 6 and 13. So that's also factorable. 6 times 13 is 78. So I'm going to try to get to one that's, if it starts with a negative, I would always try to factor that out. I'd factor that negative out there. What I mean by that is take that negative out. Now you have 4t squared plus 7t minus 2. And I think this is factorable as well. 4 times 2 is -8. -8 and +7. Yeah, that's also factorable. So I want to get to one that's non-factorable, because that's basically what the quadratic formula is all about. And I think we get to problem number, let's see, I think it's 8. No, maybe it's 9. Okay. Let me check to see if this is factorable. I really don't want to use the quadratic formula unless it's non-factorable. So let me go 8 times 5. 8 times 5 is 40. And -8 would go down here. Okay, so are there numbers that multiply to get 40 and add to get -8? Multiply to get 40 and add to get -8. They would have to be both negative. It would have to be a negative and a negative. Not too many numbers multiply to get 40. 1 and 40 don't work. 2 and 20 don't work. 3 doesn't go into 40. 4 and 10 don't work. 2 and 20, no. So this is not possible, right? This is not possible. So what we're going to do is, since this has a number here in front, I'm not going to complete the square, because when we completed the square yesterday in the previous video, we learned how to complete the square. It was always easier when the number in the middle was an even number. So and we never had a number here in front. So here's the quadratic formula. Let me just write it down here. It's -b I'll tell you what these A's, B's, and C's are. Plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac. This is all underneath the square root sign. And all of this is over 2a. Okay, and this is what you're, in this case, w. This is what w is going to be. W is going to equal this, and it's like a formula that you plug in an a, b, and a c. As long as the quadratic equation is in that form. Your a value is that coefficient that's in front of your squared term. The b value is that coefficient in front of the non-squared term. And the c value is the constant term at the end. So in this case, a is going to be equal to 8, b is going to equal to -8, and c is going to equal to 5. So I'm going to just plug it in here. Okay, and the reason why we're using this, by the way, is this is not factorable. Okay, so the equation, the quadratic equation, quadratic formula is used. This is the quadratic formula that they're talking about right here. Okay, so negative b would be -8. -8. We will change that negative into a positive, but I want to make sure you understand why it's going to be a positive 8. Plus or minus big long square root sign. Make sure you extend that line for that square root sign. Then it says b squared. Well, b is -8, so it's -8 squared. -8, I'm going to put parentheses here, squared, minus 4 times a, which is 8, times c, which is 5. And all of this is over 2a. And 2 times a is 2 times 8. Okay, so I simply just plugged in what my a, b, and c are. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and simplify this. So negative times a negative, so that's going to be an 8. Plus or minus is always in the formula. So we don't have to remember that plus or minus like we did yesterday, because it's actually in the formula. Square root, big long square root sign. Let's do the math inside the square root sign. So order of operations says we have to do parentheses first. Well, parentheses is just -8. Exponents second, so that exponents, this is going to be 64. Then we have to multiply 4 times 8 times 5. I'm going to go 4 times 5 times 8 because I can do this in my head. 4 times 5 is 20, and 20 times 8 is 160. And this is over 2 times 8, which is 16. Okay. Now you might feel the need to start simplifying, like this 8 and this 16 right here, but you can't do that. Okay, stop yourself. Stop yourself from doing that, because this plus or minus means that this is attached to this 8. So you can't cancel that 8 and 16. Okay, there might be a time that we could cancel the 8 and the 16, but that might be later on. Okay. Now notice what we have inside. We have 64 minus 160. 64 minus 160 is a negative number, right? Okay, 64 minus 160 is a negative number. It's negative 96. Now, that should make you think that we're going to have to go into imaginary solutions. So imaginary solutions, a plus bi. So this is going to be 8 over 16. 8 over 16. That's going to be the a part. plus or minus the square root of negative 96 is going to be I is going to come out. Now 96 is not a perfect square. If you took the square root of 96, you get a decimal. You get like 9.79, but you can simplify 96 because 96 is 16 times 6, and then that square root of 16 comes out as a 4. So notice I'm writing this as 4I root 6 over 16. Okay, now remember how I couldn't cancel the 8 and the 16 right there because it was attached? Now this 8 over 16 is not attached anymore because I broke it into two parts. I broke it into that part, and then I broke it into this part. So now this is equal to 1/2 plus or minus. That 4 and that 16 can cancel because there's no attachment there. That's all multiplication. So it's 4 goes into itself once and goes into 16 4 times. So we go I square root 6 over 4. Okay, so let me see if we can put this in here. So I'm going to use the fraction tool to put the 1/2. Then I'm going to put the plus or minus. And then I'm going to use the other fraction tool to put the I and then square root 6 and then 4. Okay, so that's in the form A plus or minus BI, but BI, that's the imaginary part. Okay, then I can check my answer. And we get the green check mark. Okay, before you use the quadratic formula, make sure it's in quadratic form. Okay, it's got to be in this quadratic form, and I would check to see if you can factor first. And if you can factor, the problem will be done a little bit easier by factoring. Okay, I'm going to go over a lot more problems in lecture this morning. I will see you then. Try to watch the entire lecture before trying homework 18 problems on your own. Bye for now.